Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by Next Gen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Hi, and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman, and with me today is Angie Crone, the CEO of the Upcycled Food Association. Welcome, Angie.
Hello, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you there. I'm familiar with the Upcycled Food Association, but I know that at its current state, it's grown, and that's why you've come in. So I'm excited to learn how it's grown and what you're up to there. And learn a little bit about you before we even get into the Upcycled Food Association. So Angie, if you will, tell us, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's great to be here and share our story and also my story. I would say, I've been in the sustainable food systems place for over a decade now. But if I really trace it back, it's been my whole life because I grew up on a farm in West Virginia, a small family farm. And that is where I really got really excited, obsessed with the idea of environmental stewardship and sort of how that relates to our community and our families. And so that led me to study environmental science and policy. That led me to mission-driven companies in the Bay Area, where there's just a proliferation of these very forward-thinking companies. And so I've spent, the last 10 years really working with brands that have, triple bottom line sort of approaches to the world, producing tea, or whether it's nose to tail butchery. And then I got into food waste, working with Imperfect Foods, which has recently merged with Misfits Market. So now they're like the food waste reducers in the retail space. And that led me to UFA. So I started with the Upcycle Food Association back in February as head of programs. I'm really excited about the work. And now I've taken the reins here as CEO. So we have a lot of great things on the horizon.
Well, congratulations on that. That's exciting. Yeah. And I think UFA, Upcycled Food Association, is really the leader, or I would say the leader in being able to create something and a community for these organizations really that foster. Let me go back. It's really an organization that created community for those businesses that are focused on upcycling. And before, there was no community for them.
Right. Yeah, I think you're really hitting on why they decided to come together. So the origin story for the organization is that there were these 9 companies in 2019 that were all working in upcycling, and they, met each other in different areas, trade shows, in the industry, and they decided to come together to collaborate and really challenge this idea of sort of, go it alone capitalism, because what they realized was a huge opportunity with upcycling, lots of food waste. They were also working off some really impactful reports from the NRDC and ReFed on just, we waste over 30% of the food that's produced. It goes unsold or uneaten, huge economic opportunity. And so they came together to collaborate, to share resources, knowledge, connect supply chains, and then also to really define what is upcycled food, and how do we really unify an industry around that. So it's a really cool story. So 9 companies today, we're 260 companies. Wow. Across across 20 countries. And honestly, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of companies that are starting to think this way.
So if we look back at those 9 companies, are you able to list them?
Oh my, okay, let's see. So I think I can get maybe halfway there. This is a really good question. So there's Renewal Mill, which does baking flours using okara and other plant-based sort of pulp that's left over. Regrained,
Mhm.
which uses spent grain, and I think you had mentioned it on this
We
show
had
before.
Dan on the show.
Yeah. Net Zero, which actually is a company that's based in Minneapolis, and they actually have equipment that they use to process upcycled or potential upcycled ingredients. And I think there was also Upcycled Pickled Company. I'd have to get you the list of the
Ugly
full nine.
pickle or something?
Ugly Pickle. Yeah, yeah. So I need to get you the full founder list.
Okay.
But yeah, they came together in the founder of the organization who really sort of said, okay, now I want to formalize this group, was Turner Wyatt, who was our former CEO. And he had a history of sort of bringing groups together, working in the food space as well. And so really, brought it to life over the past 3 years. So it has been an incredible journey. And yeah, like I said, I think we're just getting started, honestly.
Yeah, we had Turner on the show as well, too.
Oh, right. Wonderful.
Yeah, we're big fans because we think that this industry is, like you said, only scratching the surface, and there's so much to learn, and there's so much community to build. And I think that we can learn from these companies, and they were really trying to build something here so that they didn't have to do it alone. And by coming together and creating these credentials for people and these, the word is escaping me, sort of the guidelines, right?
Yeah.
It allowed people to be able to build their companies in a way that had guidelines.
Yeah.
And for people to talk about this and to grow their companies in a meaningful way, but also connect with each other and learn what's working, what's not. How they, what are some of the challenges they're facing, and how can they begin to work around these, figure out what is a way, what's the path forward, and how can they grow them in a meaningful way, and what's happening with the farmers, what's happening, with all the different things that go on within the supply chain to get them where they are today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of power in just talking, to have a place where you can just talk about what you're experiencing, things that you've heard. And I think with food waste in particular, it's really challenging the notion of business as usual, in the sense that sometimes food waste is looked at as it's not a problem in a supply chain because you've already found a place for it. You've already found a home. Maybe it's the farmer is coming to pick it up for animal feed, or it's already going to the compost or the landfill. But really breaking that open and saying, actually, is there a different opportunity there that could be turn your cost center into a revenue center, basically? And so we see a lot of ideation that happens in the community, or sharing. So we have an internal Slack community for members, and folks will say, hey, I have, 2 tons of, carrot peels, or I have leftover okara, and then who can use it? And then people will also say, hey, I need this, and be able to find that source. And so it's also creating an exchange of actual trading of these inputs as well, which really accelerates innovation.
I'm curious, in addition to that kind of innovation, the collaboration, what other kinds of innovation are you seeing as a result of the waste, right? So you see additional waste, right? And people they now have a place to talk about it and to share it. And as a result, are you seeing additional ideas and ideation coming out of that from all the waste that they're talking about?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel like every day, one of my favorite parts of my job is every day I hear about a new idea that I'd never even considered. So, I think one input that I think is really interesting is acid whey, which is sort of a byproduct of yogurt making, highly nutritious, and has been for decades now, a century even, to just put on fields or flush down the drain. But companies have found a way to ferment this into really healthy probiotic drinks. So that's one example that I think most people can understand is like a byproduct. But maybe the less conventional innovations are around things like the avocado pit. So things that we have long said oh, that's not edible. Let's just put it in compost or landfill. There's actually a company now working to say, actually, there's a lot of nutrition in the avocado pit. How do we extract that and actually keep nutrition in the supply chain? And so I think that's a big part of upcycling that is sometimes missed in the conversation, is that it really is about nutritional security as much as it is about diverting food from waste, reducing the impact on climate change. It's also about feeding people and getting nutritional food to them. And then the last example, which still blows my mind, is a company is looking at the nutrition extracts that you can have from food waste streams, and how might you apply that in space for like 3D printing of food. And so the innovation is incredible. We have people who are looking out very long term, and then more traditional methods too, which are just as important and critical.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And it also makes me think, in addition to the food waste that we're seeing after it comes from the farmer, what about the food waste that the farmers think about that they can't even use? Like the stuff that doesn't leave the farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you talking about that? Are you seeing any of that? And what can be done about that? Is there a conversation happening there for you? Or are you guys really focused on the CPG products and the people that are building the upcycled products?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of upcycling that it can really apply to every stage of the supply chain, from that farm level all the way up to consumers. So even what we do in our kitchens, using scraps and thinking differently about the ends that we used to cut off. Similarly, at the farm level, we're seeing people think about like trimmings differently. So imagine a cauliflower head. Normally for retail, you would cut off the bottom leaves and the stalk and just throw those away. And then, they go into compost at the farm level. Now there are companies who are saying to their growers, hey, I think we can use that in something. And what that does is creates another revenue stream, and it reduces the amount of food waste that's being decomposed and contributing to methane and carbon dioxide and all of that. So we're seeing, like, it's really a mind shift in how we think about food and what is edible and what isn't. And I think that's happening at every single level of the supply chain. And then in manufacturing, of course, you're always going to have like pretzel bits, from making pretzels, and like the little bits fall off. And it's like, well, those just used to go into a trash or a waste stream. But maybe we can capture those and create pie cells. So that kind of thinking, I'm seeing it a lot more, and it's really exciting.
It sounds it, and I'm sure that you're seeing new things all the time.
Yeah.
So it's probably fun too, right? To be part of that community, to see what's being wasted, and how people are innovating around the waste that they see and being creative, because they're already dealing with what they find, they're creating that product, and then they're having more waste. And of course, it's natural for them to be like, okay, now how do I fix this problem?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, if you like problem solving, then upcycling's for you, because every day it is like, hey, I've never thought about it that way. Maybe we try it over here. And I love it too, because it can be very regionalized. So if you're a region, I think microbrews is a great example of this in the spent grain. It's like, if you're a region that produces a lot of microbrews, then spent grain might be a very regional way to solve some of your municipal land waste issues, et cetera. So yeah, I think every day, I love problems. I love figuring out solutions for them. And so this really challenges my creativity and my ability to be resourceful.
So within UFA, how are you guys expanding? You guys are, relatively new. You guys have done a lot since you launched. But what's on your agenda as you continue to grow and the community grows?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just throw some growth stats out so you can give sort of a scope of where we've come just in 3 years during a pandemic, which has always blown my mind in terms of the UFA story. So, I already said we started as 9 companies. We're now 260 companies. We grew 32% last year. those companies are across 20 countries. So this is not just a US or a North
Right.
America sort of opportunity or solution. It really is global. And one of our first orders of business as an organization was defining what upcycle food was. And that's where we built the Upcycle Certified Standard, which is the only certification mark for consumers that indicate that this food is actually diverting food waste from the landfill or compost, and we can audit that supply chain. So you can have a lot of trust and certainty about this product's impact on the environment. So we started last year, uptake and adoption of that certification grew 118%. So we now have 324 certified products in the market. 85 of those are actually B2B ingredients, which is just a huge amount of growth. It's outpacing other certifications. The data syndicate that we work with is astonished by the opportunity. And so I share that because that's where we're going. We're really doubling down on the certification in particular, because it allows companies to sort of remove the education burden from individual companies. And it's a really powerful tool for brands. So we want to accelerate that. And we want more consumers to understand the potential. And I think we know that consumers, like the pandemic really broke open the supply chain in a lot of ways. And so they can see now the vulnerability and the risk, and we want them to be able to take what they can control into their own hands. And part of that is buying products that they feel good about and that have positive impact.
So one of the things I'm really curious though is if I join this organization, and it's a community, I'm wondering what are some of the resources you're looking to grow and add for the community to be able to take advantage of into 2023, 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, so certification is something that our community wants more of. So making it available in new markets. So right now it's predominantly available in the US and Canada. So looking to what's the next horizon is definitely something on our radar. Building out industry research. And so we just launched our second research fellowship, and this is really important to help the industry and the companies understand, food safety, legalities facing upcycled food in different areas, consumer attitudes and perception. How can you message this to get, to optimize your sales? So we're doing a lot more on the industry research side.
So and we're before you move on, so
yeah,
what does that fellowship look like? And do you bring some, are you recruiting for it, or how does somebody learn?
Yeah, great question. So we just recruited our this year's fellows. So we have 8 fellows. They're all independent researchers, postdocs working, in the food science space, or food regulation space, who basically submitted abstracts on types of things that they would want to study. And then we have a group of advisors who then review all of those submissions and select 8 of them. So we actually grew our fellowship, almost doubled it this year. Last year we had, I think, 5 fellows, now we're at 8. So we want to continue to expand that. And we usually do recruitment in the last quarter of the year. So yeah, so, and it just launched actually last week. Carey Group sponsored the program. And so we're really excited to be partnering with them because they are such a global innovator on food ingredients and food technology. So
wonderful. So one other question I have for you, and I'm just really curious, is because you guys have grown, you have not been around that long. You went from 9 companies to over 200. How many companies are you hoping to grow within 2023? How many companies are you hoping to bring to the community?
Yeah, so I mean, I think at least 300, which should be an easy win for us. But I would love to continue our growth rate of 30 to 40% year over year. And I would say we have a lot of conversations going, and usually people join because they are looking for those supply chain connections. And also they're looking for a community to like share their learnings. And so part of 2023 is also fostering more of that. So having more regional events and meetups. We do several trade shows where members can really use the UFA booth as a meeting place to connect, and then facilitating more workshops and educational seminars and things.
Oh, cool. I really appreciate you joining me today on the Essential Ingredients podcast. And for those folks not familiar with the UFA, how might they go about finding it?
Yeah, so go to www.upcycledfood.org. There's a lot of information there about our impact, about the problem of food waste, how to find certified products, and how to become certified if you're a company. And if you're a company that's looking for a community to grow your impact, join us as a member.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.